Hey, little learners. Today I'm going to be reading one of the books that you have really enjoyed. So, our first QR code book is going to be A Bad Case of the Stripes by David Shannon. Now, you guys might remember that David Shannon makes all those fun No David books. But today we're going to talk about A Bad Case of the Stripes. My book is well loved. A Bad Case of the Stripes. There's a big clue in this picture. If you read it with us before, can you see what the clue is? Camilla Cream loved lima beans, but she never ate them. All of her friends hated lima beans, and she wanted to fit in. Camilla was always worried about what other people thought of her. Today, she was fretting even more than usual. It was the first day of school, and she couldn't decide what to wear. Oops, sorry, I'm not showing you the pictures. There were so many people to impress, she tried on 42 outfits. But none seemed quite right. She put on a pretty red dress and looked in the mirror. Then she screamed. Oh no! Her mother ran into the room and she screamed too. "Oh, my heavens!" she cried. "You're completely covered with stripes." This was certainly true. Camilla was striped from head to toe. She looked like a rainbow. Could you imagine what you would do if you looked like a rainbow? And what is making her look like that rainbow? Miss Cream felt Camilla's forehead. "Do you feel all right?" she asked. "I feel fine," Camilla answered. "But just look at me." "You get back into bed this instant," her mother ordered. "You're not going to school today." Camilla was relieved. She didn't want to miss the first day of school, but she was afraid of what the other kids would say. And she had no idea what to wear with those crazy stripes. Have you ever been worried about what the other kids might say at school? That afternoon, Dr. Bumble came to examine Camilla. "Most extraordinary," he exclaimed. "I've never seen anything like it. Are you having any coughing, sneezing, runny nose, aches, pains, chills, hot flashes, dizziness, drowsiness, shortness of breath, or uncontrollable breathing?" Uncontrollable twitching. "No," Camilla told him. Uh-oh, I'm dropping the book. "I'm fine." "Well then," Dr. Bumble said, turning to Mrs. Cream, "I don't see any reason why she shouldn't go to school tomorrow. Here's some ointment that should help her clear up those stripes in a few days. If it doesn't, you know where to reach me." And off he went. Oh, goodness. What do you think's going to happen next? Are the stripes going to go away? The next day was a disaster. Everyone at school laughed at Camilla. They called her Camilla Crayon and Night of the Living Lollipop. She tried her best to act as if everything were normal. But when the class said the Pledge of Allegiance, her stripes turned red, white, and blue, and she broke out into stars. Look at her stripes now. Oh, goodness. The other kids thought this was great. One yelled out, "Let's see some purple polka dots." Sure enough, Camilla turned all purple polka dotty. Someone else shouted, "Checkerboard!" and a pattern of squares covered her skin. Soon, everyone was calling out different shapes and colors. Poor Camilla was changing faster than you could change a channel on the TV. Oh no, do you think she's getting better or worse? I think it's getting worse. That night, Mr. Hams, the school principal, called. "I'm very sorry, Mrs. Cream. I'm going to have to ask you to keep Camilla home from school. She's just too much of a distraction, and I've been getting calls from other parents. They're afraid those stripes might be contagious." Camilla was so embarrassed she couldn't believe that 2 days ago everyone liked her, and now nobody wanted to be in the same room with her. Her father tried to make her feel better. "Is there anything I can get you, sweetheart?" "No, thank you," sighed Camilla. What she really wanted was a nice plate of lima beans, but she had been laughed at enough for one day. One plate of lima beans is what she's dreaming of. How interesting. Well, yes, I see, Dr. Bumble mumbled with Mrs. Cream when Mrs. Cream phoned the next day. "I think I'd better bring in the specialist. We'll be right over." About an hour later, Dr. Bumble arrived with 4 people in long white coats. He introduced them to the Creams. "This is Dr. Gop, Dr. Sponge, Dr. Cricket, and Dr. Young." 4 people. Then the specialist went to work on Camilla. They squeezed, they jabbed, tapped, and tested. It was very uncomfortable. "Well, it's not the mumps," concluded Dr. Gop. "Or the measles," said Dr. Sponge. "Definitely not chicken pox," put in Dr. Cricket. "Or sunburn," said Dr. Young. "Try these," said the specialist. Then each handed her a bottle filled with different colored pills. "Take one of each of these before bed," said Dr. Gop. Then they filed out the front door, followed by Dr. Bumble. Look at them all examining her. Do you think she felt scared? That night, Camilla took her medicine. Oh no. It was awful. When she woke up the next morning, she did feel better. Excuse me, she felt different. But when she got dressed, her clothes didn't fit quite right. She looked in the mirror, and there, staring back at her, was a giant, multicolored pill with her face right on it. Oh no, it's getting worse. Dr. Bumble rushed over as soon as Mrs. Cream called. But this time, instead of the specialist, he brought the experts. Dr. Gould and Mr. Mellon. They were the finest scientist minds in the land. Once again, Camilla was poked and prodded, looked at, listened to. The experts wrote down lots of numbers. Then they huddled together and whispered. Dr. Gould finally spoke. "Might be a virus," he announced with authority. Suddenly, fuzzy little virus balls appeared all over Camilla. "Or possibly some form of bacteria," said Mr. Mellon. Out popped squiggly little bacteria tails. "Or it could be a fungus," added Dr. Gould. Instantly, Camilla was covered with different colored fungus blotches. The experts looked at Camilla, then back at each other. "We need to get over these numbers again, and back to the lab," Dr. Gould explained. "We'll call you tomorrow when we know something." But the experts didn't have a clue, much less a care. Look at their faces. I think they look intimidated or scared. They're not helping her. They're unsure how. By now, the TV news had found out about Camilla. Reporters from every channel were outside her house, telling the story of the bizarre case of the incredible changing kid. Soon a huge crowd was camped out front on their lawn. Look at that circus. The Creams were swamped with all kinds of remedies from psychologists, allergists, herbalists, nutritionalists, psychics, an old medicine man, a guru, and even a veterinarian. Each so-called cure only added to poor Camilla's strange appearance until it was hard to even recognize her at all. She sprouted roots and berries and crystals and feathers and a long furry tail, but nothing worked. Look over here at poor Camilla. Oh, she doesn't even look like a kid anymore. One day, a woman who called herself an environmental therapist claimed she could cure Camilla. Close your eyes, she said. Breathe deeply. And become one with your room. Oh no, I wish you hadn't said that, groaned Camilla. Slowly, she started to melt into the walls of her room. Her bed became her mouth. Her nose was a dresser, and 2 paintings were her eyes. The therapist screamed and ran from the house. What are we going to do? Cried Mrs. Cream. It just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. And she began to sob. See, Camilla? Her mouth, her eyes. Poor Camilla. All right. She went into Camilla's room and looked around. My goodness, she said with a shake of her head. What we have here is a bad case of the stripes. One of the worst I've ever seen. She pulled a container of small green beans from her bag. Here, she said. This might do the trick. Are those magic beans? Asked Mrs. Cream. Oh, my, no, replied the kind old woman. There's no such thing. These are just plain old lima beans. I'd bet you'd like some, wouldn't you? She asked Camilla. Camilla wanted a big heaping plateful of lima beans more than just about anything. But she was still afraid to admit it. Yuck, she said. No one likes lima beans, especially not me. Oh dear, the old woman said sadly. I guess I was wrong about you. She put the beans back in her bag and started toward the door. Camilla watched the old woman walk away. Those beans would taste so good. And being laughed at for eating them was nothing compared to what she'd been going through. She couldn't stand it. Wait, she cried. The truth is, I really love lima beans. I thought so, the old woman said with a smile. She took a handful of beans and popped them into Camilla's mouth. Mmm, said Camilla. Oops. There you go. Suddenly, the branches, feathers, squiggly tails all began to disappear. The whole room swirled around. When it stopped, there stood Camilla, and everything was back to normal. I'm cured, she shouted. Yes, said the old woman. I knew the real you was in there somewhere. She patted Camilla on the head. Then she went outside and vanished into the crowd. Take a look at Camilla. She's back to her kid self. Afterwards, Camilla wasn't quite the same. Some of the kids at school said she was weird, but she didn't care a bit. She ate all the lima beans she wanted, and she never had a tough case of the stripes again. So, the question is, what gives you a bad case of the stripes? What is it that you like so much that you think might get you made fun of? Do you have a lovey blanket at home that you sleep with at night? A special animal? Is it a food? Do you really like fish sticks? How about fish? Tofu? Anything could give you a bad case of the stripes. You should always be you. Be who you are. Don't be afraid of what other people think, because you only owe it to yourself to make yourself happy. I hope you enjoyed our book, A Bad Case of the Stripes by David Shannon. I look forward to seeing you next time. Have a good day, little learners.